Good evening. Welcome to Right Talk with Mike Lee. I have my guest this evening. Her name is Marquita Brown, and we're going to talk about a subject that could be kind of sensitive to some and maybe not to others. But I think it's important. It's an important topic to talk about now. Originally, we also anticipate another guest showing who's going to show up at some point, Latreese Cooke, and you may be familiar with her because she's been on my show a couple of times. But Miss Marquita Brown is, right now, she's the one sitting here with me, and we're going to engage in conversation. I'd like for her to first of all, tell you about herself.
Well, I am Marquita Brown. I am from Denver, Colorado. I was raised here, went to L.L. Campbell, went to Crawford Elementary School, and moved when I was 12 to Denver. Went to school, became a drug and alcohol counselor after working in the medical field for quite a few years. And I currently work for the empowerment program in Denver, Colorado, which is a nonprofit organization for women and transgender women, homeless, duly diagnosed mental illness and addiction problems, um, just a wide variety of issues.
How did you happen to get into that field, so to speak?
I started out in the medical field, actually. I worked on pediatrics and cardiology for a lot of years, and in my experience, dealt with a lot of neglect and abuse of children and couldn't figure out why. So I switched fields, went into mental health, behavioral health, addiction, and it kind of just falls into place when you're dealing with women who are experiencing a lot of trauma, like I said, homelessness. It all kind of plays a part, and so. Yeah.
But I'm interested in the you went from heart and kids to drugs.
Harden children to drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, part of it, like I said, part of it is because I had experienced myself an addiction issue. And then it really was wanting to know and understand the mental workings of how it all played into, destruction of life, how it happens. Is it behind abuse or, so many different things that play a part. And I just really wanted to try to help. I'm a helper. I love to help people. That's why I was in the medical field first. And having personal experience and wanting to help people to advance, knowing that you can be addicted and go through different things and still make progress in your life, change things around.
Well, on this show, I try to talk about things that are community interest. Have you found anything interesting about the prevalence of, let's say, social diseases in Austin since you've been here? Have you taken a look at that kind of information?
I have.
And what have you discovered?
I was asked, I have discovered quite a few things actually about HIV in particular in the city of Austin. I work as a navigation specialist in Colorado. A navigation specialist is a person that helps navigate people to care for HIV, in particular a medication called Truvada. Truvada is an antiretroviral medication that was brought out by the Food and Drug Administration in 2016, approved by the FDA. It's 98% effective in preventing the spread of HIV.
Is it expensive?
It's very expensive. If I'm not mistaken, last count out of pocket, Truvada is like $3,000 a month.
My God.
But there are, so with Colorado, I know that there are several options to help to pay for the medication for a person that is interested. Denver has its own insurance called PHIP. And PHIP is an insurance that's specifically for antiretroviral medications. So Truvada and medications like it, if a person is interested in pre-exposure prophylactics or post-exposure, which is PEP. So PrEP is a medication, or Truvada is a medication that you take before you've been exposed to HIV. If you want to get on the medication, you have to be tested and test negative for HIV, all of the STIs, hepatitis C. You will also do some testing for kidney functions and things of that nature. It's a pill that you take once a day. Okay, so once you get on that medication, you take it once a day. If you are exposed or if you live a lifestyle that may put you at higher risk for HIV, you're protected 98%. You still need to use condoms, of course, because it doesn't do anything for other STIs like hepatitis or syphilis or gonorrhea. It only deals with HIV.
I'm just a bit taken aback at the cost of $3,000 a month for a pill?
For one
For
pill.
30 pills?
For 30 days.
Whew, that's $300 a pill.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Fortunately, Medicaid does pay for it. Medicaid, you will have a $3 copay if you are on Medicaid. Okay, but most private insurances, you would need to connect with PHIP, or I don't know who it would be here, in the state. But yeah, PHIP would, is the supplement insurance to help to pay for the medication.
I don't know. Now, when I first heard about HIV and AIDS was back in the 80s or 90s or something like that. And I think for a while, it really was a scare. For a while, it seemed like an automatic death sentence. But it's no longer that.
No.
It's really just a matter of it being a treatable disease now.
It's a matter of taking your medication, taking care of your health. You understand what I'm saying? But yeah, it's no longer the death sentence that it was. And that's a good thing in the sense that it is no longer a death sentence, but it also puts us in a position where we really do need to revamp the education. Because just because it's no longer a death sentence, it still is very much a disease that, we need to be worried about. But with the advances in medication, you really don't hear a lot about HIV that much anymore. And so the young people that are coming up now, they don't have the information that they need to protect themselves. With the lack of even formal sex education in public schools and things of that nature, we have high prevalences of syphilis and gonorrhea among 15 to 23-year-olds, because we're not teaching the young people anymore about sexual health, about their bodies. I was reading an article that was talking about the sexual education in the United States, and the article said that by the time a child in the United States reaches the 7th grade, they will have seen more sexual acts than they will probably ever participate in their lifetime. But we're not teaching them anything about protection, anything about boundaries, anything about respect for the other person. You understand? All they see is the action, the act.
Well, aren't they doing a lot of education in the schools now?
Not, unfortunately, not that I know of. I don't know about here in the state of Texas, but I know in Colorado they don't have a lot of formal sex education or sexual health classes anymore. It's been taken out of the schools. Part of it is because some parents did not feel that the school was the right place, for their children to learn about those things. But then you also have those parents who either don't know how to or are embarrassed to talk to their children, so it still leaves them lacking.
So they may have to learn on the street, like so many,
Exactly.
like so many of us did.
Exactly.
I mean, to be honest,
Yes.
to be frank and honest about it, I was thinking about the situation in Austin in particular. It seems to me that in Austin, as you know, this is known as being a very liberal town, whatever that means. But I was wondering if the fact of Austin's reputation has had any ramifications in terms of the HIV illness with which you have professionally deal with a lot.
Well, I don't know necessarily about that piece. There's a website that you can go to, and it's called AIDSView, AIDSVU. And AIDSView is a website that is run and put together by Gilead. Gilead is the pharmaceutical company that produces Truvada. And it's also, a lot of the information is input or put in by Aaron in Colorado.
What's Truvada?
Truvada is the medication that we're talking about. Truvada is the medication.
That 3,000 a month medication?
That's it, Truvada. Yeah.
They should name that Terra.
No,
3,000 a month?
That's what it is. But it's worth it and it works.
Okay.
That's the piece. I think it works.
And what's the pharmaceutical company?
Gilead.
Gilead?
Gilead.
Okay.
And so Gilead has put together this website where you can literally go, when you go on the website, the first screen, it's a map of the United States. You can click on your specific state, and it will give you information about that state as far as HIV. Some of the things I found out about the city of Austin, and this is relevant to 2016, okay? So according to AIDSView, in 2016 in Austin, there were 5,833 residents living with HIV. 85.4 of those were male, 14.6 were female, 41% were white, 32% were Hispanic, and 21% were black. So you can go on AIDSView and find out all different kind of information. Now, what interests me the most and what I really deal with on my job is educating women, and in particular women of color, about this medication. Because when it came out in 2016, like I said, it was targeted towards men who had sex with men, because that was the people that were really having the most problem. They were having very high numbers of gay men contracting HIV. Okay, so when the medication came out, now in the state of Colorado anyway, the MSM population, especially white men, their numbers have evened out because they are using Truvada. They're taking medications so they're not spreading the disease, because Truvada really is about prevention as cure. Okay, so they're using Truvada. They're not spreading the disease.
So they're being wise and conscientious about it.
Right. Now,
Is that the same in the African American community?
well, I don't know. No, and I don't think it's necessarily about being wiser. I really do think it is more about educating them, because a lot of people have no idea that Truvada even exists. Because again, when it first came out in 2016, they targeted toward the gay men. So if you weren't in the lifestyle, or if you weren't a gay man, you understand, most doctors that I know of, even in the state of Colorado, don't really talk about Truvada unless they are dealing with gay men. The few that I have spoken to, for whatever reason, choose not to share information with women. I don't know why, especially when women in the state of Colorado, women of color in particular, are disproportionately affected by HIV. And even here, I was noticing that black females in Austin,
Here in Austin?
here in Austin, living with HIV are 16.7 times that of white women. So women of color, white, African American women and Hispanic women, for some reason, are seeing a major spike in numbers in heterosexual transmission. So these are women that are not gay, they're not using IV drugs, they're not, or this is what they're reporting, they're not using IV drugs, they're in monogamous relationships, but yet and still our numbers are increasing. So
Somehow that doesn't make sense to me.
it doesn't make sense to me either.
It doesn't. It doesn't add, because there has to be someone somewhere involved at some level with someone who has the virus.
Well, you know, being on the DL means being on the down low, which means some folks don't tell, okay? I think a large part of it could possibly be people who are accepting and relationships for people that have been incarcerated, because I don't know about here, but in the state of Colorado, they don't do testing when they release men out of prison. You know,
they don't?
Not that I know of. I've been trying to find out some of these things because I live in Colorado. I'm trying to find out why. That's part of what my job is. And I think it has a lot to do with lack of education. I think it has a lot to do with people that don't really understand the risk that they put themselves at when they do certain things or live their lives a certain way. That's my opinion. I think that people think that if it feels good, then it's okay to do it, and they don't think. I mean, you know, that's what I see. I don't know how else to, you know, I'm trying to figure it out too, to help with this problem.
You know, examining things from a common sense standpoint, if there's an increase among supposedly heterosexual women who are in relationships, supposedly monogamous relationships, and if there's an increase of the illness, the illness has to come from somewhere, some person. So if it's not those two people, it has to be some third person somewhere else, at least.
And that's a good point. I think a lot of times, kind of goes back to what I was saying, people don't really think about the consequences of their actions. Do you know what a sexual network is?
No.
Most people don't. The
I don't
sexual
wanna know.
network.
Do I want to know?
Yes, you do.
Tell me about it.
A sexual network is the people. So, say for instance, I have a boyfriend, okay, and we've been together for 6 months, okay. Well, whoever he was sleeping with prior to the 6 months I got with him.
I called it, like Aretha Franklin said, chain of fools.
There you go. That's your sexual network. So yeah,
God.
I may be monogamous. I may be monogamous, okay? But he may not be, okay? And then even if he is, the person that he was with before me might have had something that he didn't know about. Unfortunately, HIV and STDs and STIs, they lay dormant. So a lot of times you have these conditions and you don't know it yourself.
So, brother, circle your wagons.
So wrap it up. Use some condoms, use some dental dam, use, female condoms, Truvada, something to protect yourself when you do whatever it is you do. Like I said, I don't yuck nobody's yum. Whatever you prefer in your sex life, just be smart. And so I really do believe that a lot of things play into it. Like I said, I think the shortage of men plays a big part into it, because I know in Colorado, women outnumber men 5-1. There's a lot of sharing that goes around. I think the attitudes and mindsets of people when it comes to relationships have a lot to do with it. Yeah, I think the fact that we, especially as people of color, we don't sit down and have conversations in our homes about sex and about proper ways to carry yourself and handle. We don't talk about that. It seems in African American families, you don't talk about mental health issues. You don't talk about domestic violence issues, and you don't talk about sex. And those are the three things that I think we need to start talking about to our young people in particular.
How much, or do you think there's a role that can be played by the church in all this madness?
I do. I have actually seen a big improvement, I think, where the church is concerned. The improvement is the fact that they are now willing to talk about addiction, and that's the start. To me, that's where you have, starts. You got to start the conversation somewhere. You understand? I think that we need to get more comfortable with having real conversations about sex and relationships.
Real talk.
Real talk. In the church about sex and relationships. I think a lot of people pay attention in church, believe it or not. And if they started talking about it more, especially, like I said, with the young people, that might even help to increase some of the attendance for the young people. You understand what I mean? We have to kind of really meet them where they are.
When I look at things, the first thing I think about when I see a problem, the first thing I think about is how to solve the problem. And each time I examine the black community, for some reason I always come back to the church as being the center of finding a solution. And I believe that in its proper role, there could be a big part of trying to correct things on a lot of levels, economically, socially, politically, and otherwise, individually and otherwise. But I don't know that they're grasping that role or grabbing the ball and trying to run with it.
I think, honestly, a big part of it is, from the church's standpoint anyway, is lack of real understanding about the people that they're trying to reach.
So the ministers themselves need some education information.
Definitely. I have been talking to my church in Colorado about doing some classes through the Colorado Department for Health and Human Services, because they offer free educational classes on things like doing outreach. You hear churches wanting to go out in the community and they want to outreach to people, and, but I think part of the problem is the church fear some of the people they might run into or don't understand. You understand what I'm saying? And so when you take these classes, that's what they teach you. How to talk to a transgender woman to where they will hear what you have to say and you won't offend and cause extra problems. How to be safe in going out and doing what you're doing. And so I think when the church begins to get more, for a lack of a better word, of a secular education of the streets and what's going on, and then incorporate that with the scripture, I think that would help. Because they're afraid, I feel, this is my opinion, I feel like church folks are kind of afraid. They're afraid to get out there and go out into the highways and the hedges.
To be out there in the community, in the street.
Right. But these are the people you want to reach out there in the street. So that's what I think. Yeah. Education. Like I said, don't be scared. Don't stop thinking or think past yourself. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Don't just get so caught up in, like you were saying, what you think and this is how it is, because that's not always true.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's I want to switch just a little bit. You said you worked in cardiology before, cardiology and pediatrics. I had a personal story about cardiology. I was once on a heart transplant list. I was given 5 years to live. They told me that in 2002, but I wasn't paying any attention to that. I was thinking. They told me, I seen an x-ray of my heart where it swelled up to the size of a football. I mean, I actually saw the x-ray myself, and I went up there and put my fist in it. And it was like the size of a football. And I was wondering, where did all that go? But because now I've been here's a superstar. Show stops now. We were just about to change because I was about to tell them about my miracle.
Okay.
Yeah, about how I went from my heart was from the size of a football to a fist. It's back to the size of a fist now.
Wow.
Because that's what I do. Me and the man upstairs, we got a hookup.
He is able to keep us from falling.
Yes, he is, honey.
Yes, he is.
Welcome to the set now. One of my favorite people in Austin, my all-time buddy, Latreese Cooke.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks for that.
Who runs a program that I've been trying to help ever since I discovered her in the program.
That is correct.
And when I was on the Quality of Life Commission, I had two things in mind. One, to try to, I hope she's not mad at me now, but one was to try to get her some funding for her program. And two, to survive as the only black Republican who had the nerve to sit on the commission. I didn't get in any fights. I had a few arguments. Didn't get in any fights. But me and my boy Ken Thompson, who's now the chair of the commission.
That's correct.
That was our commission. That was my determination, was to get you some funding, because I felt that what you were doing was the right thing to do, because I'm all about what's right. I love my conservative brothers and love my liberal brothers, but I'm about what's right. I don't care who gets it right.
That's right.
I want to get it right.
So
now tell us about tell the audience again about your program, Latreese. I know you've been with me before, but I want you to tell them again.
I have been on here before, and I'm always excited about being here in the studio and able to, first of all, reconnect with people like yourself, Mike, and of course Marquita, who we are childhood friends and long time, just been knowing each other. But Mike, also just the opportunity to be here and talk about how you have been a tremendous advocate in many ways once you came into Austin for Melch Center. Our nonprofit works strictly with people that have previously been incarcerated and their families, and we do it in a big way. Many people are do advocacy work, and we actually provide actual resources for those persons that are plagued with that ill. And we have been real successful in that, and also thanks to the commission under, at the time that you were serving on the commission, was the first time our organization had ever been funded by the city of Austin, almost to $250,000. And so, and I just kind of want to expound on that, because many people think that it's a great thing to be funded as a nonprofit for work that you do and idealisms that you have. And I want people to really understand that those levels of funding don't come without a bunch of stuff that goes along
Bunch of
with
headaches.
it. A lot of headache, lots and lots of headache. I tell people I did better when I had no money. Yeah. But it comes with lots of headaches, and I would like to believe that much of the headache is as a black founded and black run organization. What I have found in my working in Austin is that they have nonprofits that are not black run that have been receiving legacy funding for years and years, and they rubber stamped, and they're not heavily watched. But when you have a program such as ours that they believe is strictly the resources are basically to the black community or brown community, they are not as committed from a fiscal perspective as they should be. And what I would say to those that are watching is that prison is for everybody. So it really doesn't have any kind of, it doesn't have a commitment to Republican or Democrat or Libertarian. It doesn't matter if you're gay or if you're straight. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, or brown. What the only reason why people associate our work more to minorities, people of color, black and brown, is because we have been for so many years erroneously sent to prison in a volume that white people do not actually experience. So I think that it sometimes it's very difficult as a person who has been given this task, really, I believe, by God, to do this work and to be committed to it, regardless of whether you're funded or not. And it becomes very difficult sometimes when you are faced with arguing with entities or trying to make them believe that you are worth or that you have integrity to manage their money, and that all black people are not crooks, and that we're not trying to, we're not trying to do anything that's wrong. But what we are doing is that we can speak to the needs of the people, and they can respect and receive it more when they see people of like kind servicing them. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so that's something that I really feel like the city of Austin and Travis County is abandoning. They have people in place, and I don't want to just make this be about them, because this is other entities. These are private foundations that have control of the purse strings. When it comes to us, or things that we present to you as a viable program, believe us, because it is a discredit to us, first of all, as professionals, to believe that our intent is not legitimate or good. And then when you tax us with so much, so many bureaucratic
Hassle.
paperwork and hassle for no reason, and then prohibit us from being able to provide the actual services because you are laden with all these other things that are really just busy stuff to appease the bureaucracy. And I just want to say, in finality to that, it's good to have your infrastructure together. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's bad when the people that are watching your infrastructure and watching your services have poured in extra stuff to make it seem like your infrastructure is not there to support them giving you money.
Latreese, I'm working on several projects, and I've kind of developed a theory. You have people get hung up in process and not product.
Yes, yes.
See, and from what I've gathered from you over the several months, even though I haven't seen you and I don't know when last time I saw you, but we chatted from time to time, is that it seems like you were getting, not interference, but unnecessarily bothered with things that had nothing to do with servicing the person.
Exactly.
It's about helping somebody.
Exactly.
Not about how you do it, it's that you do it.
Yeah. And if I could just go a little bit further and say that, everything about money that's given by federal and public funding and stuff, everything is tied to how many people, how many heads do you count?
Deliverables.
And deliverables,
So-called.
yeah, and so
Those are
if,
people.
if
Those
I,
ain't
you
things.
know,
Those
if
aren't
I-
widgets.
Exactly. So if I deliver one thing, I'm successful. If I deliver one person from the chaos in all of the struggles and stress that they've gone through, we're successful. Do not make us be responsible to 10 heads so that you can then, because there's federal money and many of these entities become bypasses. So there's federal money and the agencies are able to distribute that money. It's called a federal bypass grant. And so if you are trying to meet your numbers in order for you to get your coffers replenished, and it's a domino effect. So many times people are so beat down, especially small nonprofits. They are so beat down because they can't meet the requirements. And because they do burden you with the little things that have nothing to do with the actual service that you can provide to people. And I can tell you, it really is, it's really stressful. And I want to encourage, in case we don't go back to this and I forget because I'm old, if you are listening and you have the capability of being a contributor, there's a man that on our PayPal, I don't know who this guy is, but he has, for the last 2 years, he's contributed $5 every month to our organization. And many people would see that as nothing to talk about. But it's something. Why? Because it's consistent. This is what I'm saying about even being in the gap in a nonprofit and doing the type of work that we do. You have to be consistent, because consistency is what wins the game. And so I feel like, for me, that persons have to understand not only to need us, but to support us, because it makes it a lot easier when you're going to the city and you're going to the county to be able to show that you have public support that is consistent and that is feeding into your coffers.
See, and that's why when I was on the commission, Latreese, that's why what you were doing, helping your organization, was so important to me. Not so from the standpoint of of trying to increase or raise your credibility, so to speak. Trying to give you a boost. You know what I mean?
Well, because we all know that when you receive city and county funding, that at that point says, oh, they are worth, that makes other people give you money. And I have to say to the Texas Bar Foundation, who ended up giving us a grant, and then even from the telecommunications division of City of Austin gave us a contract as well. I mean, there have been many things that have fed because of that funding. Again, Mike, I have to go back and say,
that's what I was hoping.
exactly.
That's what I was hoping.
This is what
You hadn't told me that before, but
no, I hadn't.
that's what I was
That's
hoping.
what we have to do. You have to leverage your resources, and you have to barter those things. And the sad part about it is, after 14 years almost in the business, that you're still at a point where you have to leverage and barter, even though you have history behind you. I say all the time, there are many new pop-up organizations, and I get that. But they are able to pop up now because we have already done the groundwork. So the things that I did to come in to be able to service people that have previously been incarcerated in their families, you all can now pop up, and you don't have those same struggles that Latreese Cooke and Mel Center has, because those bridges have already been built for you to cross over. And so in saying that, and then there's that whole territorial thing about nonprofits. Nobody wants to share information or share resources because it's such a lynching environment. And so let me say, I've never been ashamed or never been scared to share my knowledge or even what I have, because what's given to me is for me. And so, and you're only as strong as the people you have around you. So I don't mind having people that have strong backgrounds and strong academic things behind them, because why? It only makes Melge better, us be able to cross over additional lines and stuff. I've grown in this business. I really have. This has been a blessing. I've grown so much. I've learned now how to take some of the punches and not fall apart about it. And so, I thank God for every opportunity, because every opportunity is an opportunity.
Yes,
Well,
it is.
I got it.
I didn't mean to go. Although it is.
I got to spill these beans, Latreese. I met you at the Victory Drill. You in an argument with Cliff, right?
This is true.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And I think about the difference between the lady I met at the Victory Grill and a lady we went to the GOP fundraiser that
That's
time.
right. It was a Michael Reagan. It was the Michael Reagan fundraiser.
Went to the Reagan dinner one
Yeah,
time.
that's right.
You know.
It was during the time that Senator Cornyn was given an award.
Right.
He was given an
It's
award
a long.
and you know what? And actually, just about 2 months ago, I was invited to Senator Cornyn's. I just went to Washington D.C. for the first time. Wonderful place to go. You gotta get there. And visited with Ashley Close and discussed with them at length about opportunities and stuff via the Koch brothers and so Melge is not a partisan organization. We love everybody's money because we have a mission. Yeah, exactly.
It's all green.
Yeah,
I told
exactly.
you
You
that
told me a long time
I told you that a long time ago.
It is, and the reality of it is that right now, you have to be user friendly to the persons and the administrations that are in control. And what I find right now is that particular platform and that particular party has a very big interest in doing some things to revamp portions of the criminal justice system. And so because they have that interest and that's what they're doing now, of course, they're interested in talking to people like Melge. We didn't go to them, they came to us. And so I feel like what that says is that the work that we're doing is speaking for itself. And we can't help everybody, but once a person comes into the doors, we have that opportunity to. And I just want to swing just real quick to Marquita, because, we have talked so much about just how people come out of prison and stuff like this, and they are plagued with different kind of health issues, and even sexually transmitted diseases and stuff, because they've been exposed to other persons in prison may have experienced any kind of, abuse, molestation, rape, all kind of stuff. And, and it has just been wonderful to have people in my corner that I can call from anywhere to give me information, advice, knowledge that they have to share with me in order for us to be able to infuse stuff into that. And so, Marquita, you have just been a vast wealth of knowledge for me through the years. Just when finding out that I started this, and just from life experiences that you've experienced trying to recruit other people on the street and stuff like that. So you definitely know how prison coincides with
Definitely. Not only HIV, but really hepatitis is a big one.
Yes.
Hepatitis C is really a silent killer, and it's really almost as bad as HIV in the sense that HIV dies really quick outside the body. Exposure, it'll die. Hepatitis C can live up to 30 days outside the body. You can get infected. Yeah, so
and
jailhouse
people come out. Yes,
tattoos
there you go.
and all that kind of stuff. All of that is hepatitis.
Yep.
Will lead to hepatitis. Most people just don't pay attention. They don't realize it, I guess. They don't think, I don't know what it is. We were trying to figure out why is it that African American women, our numbers are increasing. Heterosexual African American women. And
supposedly in monogamous relationships.
Supposedly, they are not reporting any high risk activity, right? So they're not using IV drugs. They're not promiscuous or in monogamous relationships, but our numbers are increasing. I just was looking here in Texas. Black females living with HIV compared to white women is 16.7% to white women. Yeah, African American women in this state and Hispanic men in this state. In Colorado, it's African American men are fastly approaching white men HIV and African American women. So we got to figure out what is going on. Is
Wow.
a lack of education?
Well,
Is it-
these health issues and challenges should be concerned to everybody. I don't care
Exactly.
I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are.
So were you guys aware that in June, at the 20th of June, that the, what do you call it, the,
Juneteenth or
no, the Health and Human Services,
yeah.
you guys did the Paris Declaration. The
Yes.
Paris Declaration, yeah, which is the pretty much what we're doing with Truvada. I think that's when you guys start doing the billboards, peel a day. You understand? Same type of thing. Sorry, I'm trying to
Yes.
get my phone. But yeah, that is
You got a phone that wants
Sorry.
to
But yeah. So I was really excited when I saw the billboards because in Colorado we just got our first commercial last month talking about Truvada. This medication's been out since 2016, but nobody has said anything to us.
Well, again, and I think that goes back to saying how, as Black people, we are a lot of times behind the eight ball. We don't have the information. I just was with a guy on Friday, and he's in his 50s, and he just recently had a stroke, and he was saying that he just realized that he got on probation, I guess when he was maybe, in his late 20s or whatnot. They gave him probation, and he ended up doing 5 years, I think 5 years on probation. They told him that it was deferred, and that if he was successful and he completed it, that it would be off his record. He just found out just a couple of
ain't off- it's not
no,
off
it's
his
not
record.
off his record, and it's
gotta
not.
get it out. He
He,
gotta take it
he
out.
needed to go further, and no, his lawyer didn't tell him that at the end of it. The probation after successful completion didn't tell him about it, and he finds out when he goes to get certified to do basketball coaching for kids. He went for that, and that went backwards, and then he couldn't even become a notary. And so he called me, him and his wife, they called, and he was very distraught because he was like, he recognizes that 15 years of his life, he hadn't even really understood why some of the things that he was applying for, he had gotten looked over. He never knew that it really had anything to do with a criminal history. Again, because of him not knowing, and many of you all, whoever is watching this, when somebody tells you deferred adjudication and you get excited and start doing the leprechaun kick, you need to stop and remember that once that is completed, do your due diligence. Make sure when they tell you, hey, here's your exit off of probation, that you say, hey, before I exit, I want to make sure, and you can talk to this about from a legal perspective.
Well, what people need to do is when you're on deferred adjudication, when you used to be, unless it's changed, usually once you've done a third, you're eligible to get the rest of it off your back.
Right.
But once it's off your back, you have to make sure that you get your record expunged.
And Mike, how would so what is the best way to tell?
A person would have to get a lawyer and file a motion to expunge, get his record expunged.
So
And after it's expunged, the only people who would have access and knowledge of that probation would be the DA's office. They always do.
Okay.
I used to work in the DA's office. I know. We never give up nothing. We never give up nothing. Don't get that up.
But I think that's information. And this guy was in his late 40s or whatever, and you could hear the stress and the distress in his voice from not even having that knowledge. And he was a smart enough guy. Him and his wife were smart enough that they were almost blaming themselves for not even knowing this. But it's many things about these systems that we don't know, and it goes back. We have disparities from a legal perspective, disparities in the criminal justice system, disparity in banking and finances, disparity in our just social intake. Period. They're disparate in how they treat us, even, when it comes to mortgage loans and stuff like that. And we're talking about 2018. 2018, and it's unnerving to think that we have not yet reached a place where we're not talking about disparity.
It's just two things, Latreese. One is my conservative brothers who happen not to have tans like me. I think you know that I don't let them off. You know, I called them bluff. I said, you talk about forgiveness. Where's your forgiveness? Where is it? Do something. Don't just sit and talk about it. Do something. Take action when you can take action. And Zim could tell you, you know, he and I have had some go-rounds on that. I mean, because that's what I do. You know, because my thing, you know, on my show, Latreese, I always say, what's good for the black community is good for the community. And I'm going to say it until them called home. And they called home and said, not now. Now? But I believe that. Because we're all on the same boat, and to the extent that the boat rises, we all rise with it. Okay? And it's just that I believe that my conservative brethren have failed in that regard, and continue to fail in terms of reaching out and just talking and treating people like, as Trump has said, we all bleed red blood. Well, act like it, damn it.
Yeah,
Act like it,
absolutely,
damn it.
absolutely. So I have to, you know, I am always, I became an elected official in the community I lived in 2 years ago, and wasn't successful in this election, and that was fine. Thank you, Jesus.
You had enough to do anyway.
Yeah, and so, but in saying that, I learned a lot about different processes that I had always been maybe a little bit more critical of, because I actually had the opportunity to sit in the seat.
You was in it.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing that I can definitely say, and I think that this is really important to say, is that, you know, I always feel like every time I get to do something that's different, that it was meant to help me to continue the mission that God has me on. I really believe that. And so, our elected officials at a federal level, although I look at them, our concern has to be focused around our local administration and who we can. It's all
politics is local.
Exactly. You know. So what I want to say about that is, when I look at your conservative brothers and I look at my liberal brothers who are in control, and I go again back to the funding situation, you have many Democrats in control of the purse strings in Travis County and the city of Austin, who still are adopting the practice of being disparate and unequal and all these things. And so then it becomes a issue with you, who in control matters. Does they need to be a Democrat or Republican, or do they just need to be an all black dais, or, you know, in order for us to get some fair treatment, or does the mayor need to be replaced, because even though they speak a good game, they really talk about it, but they're really not about it.
What you do. It's about what you do.
It is about what you do. And so what I learned as an elected official is that many of the people that came to me, and many of the people that continue to support me on the dais and off the dais, were because they figured that finally they had someone that they could talk to, who was going to tell them, no, we can't do it because it's not in the budget. I don't care who else is over here telling you that it can be. I think it's important to be real with the people that put you there, your constituency, and people that are coming to you for help and aid for things that they believe that the community needs. A nonprofit is birthed out of something that is not happening in the community.
That needs to happen.
That needs to happen. And so when somebody figures out that needs to happen, whether it's, you know, spade the dogs or cut the trees or whatever it is, at that point, our elected officials have a responsibility to speak to the needs of the community that they were elected to serve. And if you can't do it, don't send people around on a monkey goose chase making like you really are concerned and you care, when you really could give two damns about it. You know?
I think that they need to have had some actual experience with some of the things that the people need. I think, for instance, a lot of the issues that I have with the organization that I work with, or really not with the with HUD. Okay, the housing piece, housing first, which is what HUD is. Okay, great. I understand that you're in place to help homeless people to get off the streets. I get that piece. But I know from working with these homeless people that to allow them to be successful, they need more than just housing.
Yes.
Okay. But when you, as HUD, who's funding their housing, tell me as a person that is put here and educated to help them to work through addictions and whatever else, that I cannot put any restrictions or stipulations on them, right? Because this is housing first. So as long as they're housed, as far as HUD is concerned, that's all
that's
I'm
it.
concerned about.
Yeah.
They're housed. They don't care nothing.
There's still another piece of the person.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. So when you have
Exactly.
people that don't understand or don't have any inkling or connection or experience with what it actually takes to get a homeless person off the streets to be productive, and you understand, it's not just about housing them,
To
but
be self-sustaining. You want
Yeah,
them to be
exactly.
self-sustaining. That's what you want.
so
That's the goal.
exactly.
And that's just a step.
But when they don't,
Now, I
Yeah.
hate to do this, but we just getting warmed up, huh,
I know it, right?
But I want to thank you guys for being on the show.
Thank you for
And
having
I
us.
want
Very
to
much so.
extend an invitation to you. We're having an event at the Fairmont Hotel on Thursday that's free from 4 to 6.
Nice.
It's going to be me and a bunch of my black conservative friends.
Okay.
And it's a free event.
Wonderful.
And tell
Is
your
that an
friends, it's free and anybody can come.
Well, we
I
also,
thought I'd put that out there.
are-
You know I am, Trees.
yeah, I know you. I just so appreciate this.
I'm still me.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
You and
that's-
Nathalene, thank you all so much
Yes,
for
that-
always
that's what I
considering
do.
considering Melge. And I'd like to say that tomorrow we will be on the air at 7 a.m. on the Wake Up Call. We'll have Miss Marquita.
You don't be on with on KT show?
Now I'm actually sitting in for Nelson Linder because a NACP convention is going on.
Watch out now. Last time Sanford Nelson went, she got in trouble.
Yeah, but that's okay. I got this. So I'm gonna have Marquita. Marquita's gonna be a guest on, and actually also we'll have a call in from former NBA player Terry Cummings. So just hopeful that you all are up with us at 7 in the morning. And if
Okay.
you want to contribute, you can always go to melj.org. That's www.melj.org. And thank you all for your support. Thank you,
Yes.
Mike, for your
thank you
support.
for having
Thanks,
me.
Tree.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
You know, I try to do what's right.
Yeah, well, you try.
I try. You know, I
I'm
keep
still
trying.
digging your Kango. Thanks for bringing the Midwest to the South.
let me do the rest.
There you go.
That's how I do it. That's what we do.
Oh, wow,
That's what we
nice.
do.
Wow, Mike, it's been a minute.